The cursor blinks beside Lena Ortiz's name, and then her name is gone. Grant Mercer replaces it with his own on the Darrow Metals account. He assigns cold arc components to Evan Price, Pike Industrial Hardware to himself, and keeps moving down the spreadsheet while 11 faces glow in separate squares on the conference room monitor. It is 8:07 Monday morning. The first supplier call is scheduled for 8:15. Lena's brass date stamp sits beside her notebook, still set to Friday. Grant caps the marker in his hand. Effective immediately, Lena will support procurement internally. You're too junior to handle serious negotiations, he says. All vendor communication goes through the contacts shown here. Celia Bell studies the printed agenda instead of Lena. That is the part Lena will remember, not Grant's voice, not Evan's uncomfortable cough. Celia's thumb pressing a crease flat in the paper, while Grant removes every account before the first call. Lena reaches for the little brass stamp and folds its handle into her palm. "Questions?" Grant asks. The conference room ventilation clicks on. Someone's coffee lid gives a tiny plastic pop. Patrice Monroe, the warehouse lead, leans back in her chair. Are suppliers aware? They receive the updated contact sheet at 7:45. Lena looks up. With the open exceptions. Grant's eyes settle on her. He has a gift for making eye contact feel like being selected at airport security. The what? The unresolved quote conditions, Darrow's gauge conflict, Cold Arc's operating specs, and the Pike freight claim. I reviewed the files. Lena thinks of the 3 packets on the left side of her desk, each one stamped Friday and marked in green pencil. She had left them there because Grant wanted hard copies for his Monday review. Then you saw my notes, she says. I saw a lot of notes. A laugh moves around the table and dies before it belongs to anyone. Grant smiles as if they have shared something harmless. Bellwether Foodservice Fabrication occupies 2 low brick buildings behind a tire warehouse outside Milwaukee. In the front building, salespeople promise graceful stainless serving lines to hotels and hospitals. In the back, welders, polishers, assemblers, and one deeply temperamental laser cutter turn those promises into objects that have to fit through real doors. Procurement sits between the two, absorbing both forms of optimism. Celia clears her throat. We should get into the briefing. Grant clicks to the next slide. His forecast shows material savings in calm blue bars. 4% on sheet stainless, 6% on commercial hardware, almost 9% on refrigeration components. Lena recognizes the numbers. They are the lowest figures from the quote sheets, before freight, tooling, minimum releases, and exceptions. He has built the savings out of the parts written in smaller type. At 8:14, Evan wheels his chair closer to the conference phone. He is 42, lean, careful with his cuffs, and still new enough to Bellwether that he says fabricated stainless instead of fab stainless. Grant hired him from an automotive supplier in Kenosha and introduced him twice as a real negotiator. Darrow first? Evan asks. Darrow first, Grant says. The call does not connect. At 8:18, Evan tries again. At 8:21, an email appears in the shared inbox Grant had created over the weekend. Grant opens it on the monitor. Pending technical reconciliation, Darrow Metals is pausing quotation activity on all Bellwether annual volume requests. The room goes still enough for Lena to hear the copy machine outside cycling through somebody's 30-page mistake. Grant reads the message twice. What technical reconciliation? Celia asks. Lena looks at the folded brass handle inside her palm. The 14-gauge and 16-gauge conflict. Grant doesn't turn around. There shouldn't be a conflict. Sales quoted 16 on the North Lake Hospital line. Engineering revised the hot wells to 14 after the deflection test. Both drawing sets went out in the bid package. Which one is correct? Both, depending on the station. Grant faces her. Did you tell Darrow that? Yes. Then why did they pause? Because the release schedule still says 16 across the whole job. Grant's mouth tightens slightly. It is the only visible sign that something has landed. Evan lifts one hand. Easy fix. We send the corrected schedule. Engineering hasn't issued it, Lena says. Grant checks the clock. Call Martin. Martin's on the Amtrak job site until Wednesday. He has a phone. He also has the only approved load calculations. Grant puts the marker down with care. Lena, this is exactly why supplier communication needs to be centralized. A quote request shouldn't become a scavenger hunt. She could tell him that centralizing communication after scattering authority among 3 new contacts is a strange use of the word. She could tell Celia that Darrow's representative once stayed at the mill until 10 at night because Lena found a heat number error before 4,000 pounds of stainless went on a truck. Instead, she says, the conflict is listed on the first page of the packet. Grant glances toward her desk beyond the glass wall. The packets are not there. Lena notices the empty corner where she left them. She looks back at Grant. I reviewed the files, he says again. At 8:37, Coldark pauses its quotes. The message arrives from Malcolm Reed, a sales engineer whose emails usually begin with Lena. Here's where you're about to make my week difficult. Today's begins to Bellwether procurement. Coldark requires confirmed ambient temperature range, electrical service, elevation and refrigerant line length before resuming pricing on the 6 pending compressor packages. Grant scrolls down. Why are they asking for elevation? These are all Wisconsin jobs. 2 are, Lena says. 1 is in Denver, 1 is in Santa Fe. The others haven't been awarded. Evan rubs his jaw. The request sheet says Midwest Regional Package. That's the sales region. Celia finally looks directly at Lena. Were the job locations attached? They were in the project notes. Were they attached to the request? Lena can feel Grant waiting. No, she says. I usually put together the operating sheet before Coldark quotes. Grant gives a small nod as though she has just supported his case. And where is that sheet? I didn't finish it. Why not? Because you asked me Friday afternoon to stop contacting suppliers until today's briefing. Patrice turns her pen between her fingers. Grant says internal preparation was still your responsibility. You asked for my vendor files by 4. I spent the rest of the day updating them. And yet they're incomplete. They're current. That isn't the same thing. No, Lena says, it isn't. Celia shifts in her chair. Let's keep moving. They do. The meeting limps through nitrile gaskets, imported casters, sink drains, control boards, and the custom drawer slides used in Bellwether's hotel work. Grant speaks more quickly as he goes. Evan writes down every number. 2 buyers who have been with the company longer than Lena volunteer nothing. At 9:06, Pike Industrial Hardware pauses 6 custom hinge quotes until Bellwether resolves freight claim PIH-4471 and confirms acceptance criteria for polished returns. 3 suppliers, 3 paused quote streams. One morning, Grant stares at the red priority flag beside Pike's message. Is this coordinated? He asks. Patrice snorts before she can stop herself. Grant turns. Something funny? The idea of Darrow, Coldark, and Pike coordinating anything. Pike can barely coordinate with Pike. Celia's mouth twitches, but Grant's does not. He looks at Lena. Did you speak to any of these suppliers after receiving the reassignment notice? No. Before? Friday morning. All 3? Yes. They all had open items. Did you tell them their accounts were being reassigned? I didn't know. He studies her for several seconds, trying to decide whether her calm is evidence. Lena opens her notebook. At the top of the page, she writes, Monday, July 8th. Her handwriting comes out too small, so she writes it again underneath. Grant dismisses everyone except Lena, Evan, and Celia. Patrice pauses beside Lena on her way out. A fine silver scratch runs across one lens of her safety glasses. You want this open or closed? She asks, holding the conference room door. Closed, Grant says. Patrice closes it. Through the glass, she walks 6 steps toward the warehouse, turns, and points 2 fingers at her own eyes, then toward Lena's desk. The missing packets. Lena gives the smallest nod she can. Grant sits at the head of the table. Celia takes the chair to his right. They have been married for 11 years, long enough to disagree with identical expressions. Grant's irritation goes cold. Celia's goes quiet. Evan remains near the phone, his legal pad filled with clean, slanted writing. "I want to be very clear," Grant says. "Supplier relationships belong to Bellwether." "Yes," Lena says. "They are not personal property." "I know. Then help me understand why 3 suppliers withdrew active quotes within 80 minutes of being told you were no longer their contact." They pause them. Semantics. Not to a supplier. Grant glances at Celia. "This is what I'm talking about." Celia rubs her thumb over the crease in the agenda again. "Lena, did you imply there would be problems if the accounts moved?" "No." "Did you say Grant was changing the process?" "No." "Did you tell anyone to wait for you?" "No." Each answer seems to disappoint her more. Lena sets the brass stamp on the table. The base makes a soft, solid click. "I told Darrow the release schedule didn't match engineering's drawings. I told Coldark we still owed them operating conditions. I told Pike I wouldn't close the freight claim until receiving verified the damaged crates. That's all." "The damaged crates were credited," Grant says. 4 were credited, 2 weren't. "I saw the credit memo. It says 4. The claim total matches the receiving estimate. The estimate was entered before we opened the bottom 2 crates." Grant leans back. "You realize you are describing a process that depends on information living in your head. It lives in the files. Files nobody else can interpret. I put an exception summary on the front of every packet, handwritten in green pencil. Green scans clearly." Evan's eyes flick toward her. It is the first time he looks interested rather than uncomfortable. Grant says, "We have an enterprise system. We have half an enterprise system. Purchasing uses it. Engineering uses a shared drive. Receiving uses the dock log because the tablets drop Wi-Fi by Bay 4. Which is another issue I intend to fix. I hope you do." Celia's gaze lifts sharply. Lena hears how that sounded half a second too late. Grant hears it exactly on time. "Starting today," he says, "Evan owns supplier negotiations. You will provide administrative and technical support. You will not contact a vendor without his written approval." Evan shifts. "Grant, I'm comfortable taking point, but there may be value in a transition period." "That was Friday." Lena looks at him. "I wasn't told Friday." "You were asked to update your files." "I thought that was for the annual review." "You made an assumption." "Yes," she says. "I assumed someone would tell me before changing my job." Celia closes her eyes briefly. Grant's voice lowers. "Your job is not being changed. Your reporting structure is being clarified. What am I authorized to resolve? Evan will tell you. Can I approve freight credits? No. Technical substitutions? No. Release date changes? No. Can I clarify existing specifications? Through Evan. And if a supplier contacts me directly, you forward it." Lena writes each answer down. Grant watches her. "Is there a problem?" "I want to understand the boundary. The boundary is simple. Evan negotiates. You support." Lena turns to Evan. "Do you accept responsibility for commercial terms on the 11 accounts?" Evan's pen stops. Grant answers for him. "He does." I asked Evan. Celia says her name quietly. Lena. The warning in it is familiar. Celia used the same tone 4 years ago when Lena challenged a rush order that would have put unvented hot wells into a hotel buffet line. Back then, Celia had found her by the coffee machine the next morning and thanked her where no one could hear. Lena waits. Evan clears his throat. "I accept responsibility for the accounts assigned to me. I'll need complete documentation and reasonable access to subject matter experts." Grant nods. There, settled. "What about the accounts assigned to Grant?" Lena asks. Grant gives a short laugh. "You're testing my patience." "No," Pike will ask. "Then Pike can ask me." They did. The quote is paused. A patch of red climbs above Grant's collar. Celia places 2 fingers on the agenda, close to his wrist without touching it. "Enough," she says. We need those quotes moving today. Lena, prepare responses to all 3. Evan will review and send them. Under his name? Yes. Lena looks at Celia. The suppliers will think he resolved the issues. They will think Bellwether resolved the issues. It is such a polished answer that Lena wonders how long Celia has been practicing it. Grant stands, gathering his marker and laptop. Have the drafts to Evan by 11. The engineering correction won't be ready by 11. Draft what we need. I can draft the questions. I can't supply Martin's calculations. Then get creative. Lena closes her notebook. I'll get accurate. Grant's chair rolls backward and taps the wall. For one moment, Lena thinks he will keep pushing. Instead, he smiles. Good, he says. That's the energy I want. He leaves with Celia. Through the glass wall, they walk side by side toward her office, already talking in low voices. Evan stays behind. He straightens the edges of his legal pad against the table. Well? Lena picks up the brass stamp. That could have gone worse, he says. How? He considers it. Grant could have asked me to fix the freight claim. Despite herself, she laughs once. Evan's smile arrives carefully. For what it's worth, I didn't know he was taking every account from you. You knew he hired you to negotiate. I thought we'd divide the categories. So did I. He looks through the glass toward Grant and Celia. I'm not interested in taking credit for work I didn't do. Then don't. I'm also not interested in starting a war during my 2nd month. Then don't do that either. His smile disappears. You make it sound easy. No, I make it sound like a choice. Evan tears 3 clean pages from the back of his pad and slides them toward her. Darrow, Coldark, Pike. Can you get me enough to respond by 11? I can get you enough to understand why you shouldn't. That isn't what Grant asked. No, Lena says, folding the stamp's handle upright. It's what the suppliers asked. When she returns to her desk, the 3 packets are stacked neatly on her chair. Patrice is nowhere in sight. The top packet is Darrow. Lena's green circle surrounds the conflicting gauge callouts. Her Friday stamp sits beneath it, square and dark. Someone has added a yellow sticky note in Grant's handwriting. Remove before scanning. Looks unprofessional. Lena peels off the note and places it in her notebook. Then she stamps Monday's date beside Friday's and begins writing exactly what happened. By 10:43, Lena had 3 draft responses and a headache behind her left eye. She sent Evan the Darrow draft first. It identified the 2 gauge requirements, listed the affected station numbers, and asked Darrow to hold annual volume pricing until Martin released the corrected schedule. Evan appeared beside her desk 2 minutes later. You told them to keep the quote paused. I told them why it has to stay paused. Grant wants it resumed. Darrow prices by weight. We haven't told them what weight we're buying. He leaned against the edge of the empty desk across from hers. Suppose I ask them to quote both gauges. You lose the annual volume break because you're splitting the tonnage. Suppose I tell them 14. We overpay for material on 9 stations and add weight the customer didn't approve. 16. The hot wells bow. Evan stared at the packet. Those are remarkably unfriendly options. The friendly option was fixing the release schedule Friday. His eyes moved to the yellow note she had tucked beneath her notebook cover. Only one corner showed. What's that? Something I don't want removed before scanning. He let out a breath through his nose. Send me Coldark. Coldark's response was 4 paragraphs longer. Lena attached the location list, the electrical requirements they did have, and a table of missing operating conditions. Silver Basin Hotel in Denver was highlighted because the standard compressor package lost capacity at that elevation. The Santa Fe project had a similar issue, though sales had not yet confirmed the final site. Evan read it at her desk. You made this table this morning? I had half of it Friday. Where was it? In my head, apparently. That earned her a sideways glance. You're going to make me regret trying to be decent. I'm going to make you regret calling my work administrative. I didn't call it that. You accepted the job from the man who did. Across the aisle, one of the other buyers became intensely interested in a carton of sink drains. Evan lowered his voice. I accepted a senior buyer position. I didn't receive a secret appendix about humiliating you in a conference room. You still have the position. Yes, and I still don't. He looked as though he wanted to answer, then returned to the screen. At 11:12, Grant came out of his office. I said 11. I was waiting on receiving photographs for Pike, Lena said. You were told to draft responses. A response that says the claim is resolved would be false. I didn't ask you to say that. You told us to get creative. Grant stopped beside her chair. In the quiet around them, the laser printer deposited a single page into its tray. Evan, are the drafts usable? They're thorough. That wasn't my question. Evan's jaw shifted. Darrow needs engineering. Cold Ark needs additional specs. Pike depends on whether 2 more crates were documented at receiving. Grant looked at Lena. So after 2 hours, you've produced 3 reasons we can't proceed. I produced what we need to proceed. He reached across her desk and picked up the Darrow packet. The brass stamp had left 2 dates on the cover, Friday and Monday, with the green gauge conflict between them. What does this add? He asked, tapping the Monday stamp. It shows when the packet was reviewed after reassignment. It shows that you're creating a paper trail. Yes. He set the packet down. For a second, Evan pretended to reread his legal pad. Then he gave up pretending. Grant said, Send the drafts through Evan. He'll adjust the language. What adjustments? Tone, for one. Which sentence? The entire posture is passive. Because we're waiting on internal decisions. That is not something we advertise to suppliers. They already know. They asked us for the decisions. Grant turned to Evan. Send Darrow a request for dual pricing. Tell Cold Ark to quote the standard regional package with an option for high-altitude performance. Tell Pike we expect continued quotation activity while the freight matter is reviewed. Lena said, Pike already reviewed it. Grant's gaze stayed on Evan. By noon, he walked away. Evan remained beside Lena's desk. I'll change while we await engineering release to pending final configuration. That's accurate. I'll keep your tables attached. Good. For Pike, I'll say we're verifying the 2 additional crates. Good. And I'll ask Darrow for dual pricing. You'll lose the volume break. I know. Lena looked up at him. He shrugged. Sometimes you document the cost of an instruction. At 12:17, Darrow replied. The account representative, Simone Beck, copied Grant, Evan, and the shared inbox. We can provide budgetary pricing for both configurations. Firm annual volume pricing will remain on hold pending authorized release quantities. Lena never asked us to quote uncertainty as though it were confirmed demand, and we will maintain the same standard under the revised contact structure. Evan read the last sentence twice. From his office, Grant said, Lena. The whole department heard him. She went in with her notebook. Celia had joined him, a takeout salad unopened in front of her. Grant's laptop displayed Simone's email. Explain this, he said. Darrow won't commit mill capacity without confirmed quantities. The last sentence. What about it? Why is a supplier invoking your name in a communication about our process? You'd have to ask Simone. I'm asking you. Lena kept her hands around the notebook so she wouldn't reach for the green pencil tucked into its spiral, because that was my standard with her. Your standard. Bellwether's when I represented Bellwether. Grant sat back. Did you cultivate a relationship with Simone outside approved channels? We've had coffee at trade shows. She sent a plant when my mother had surgery. I sent one when her partner did. Celia looked at her. That isn't what he means. I don't know what he means. Grant's patience thinned visibly. I mean, did you position yourself as the only person here suppliers could trust? No. Then why don't they trust the new contacts? They don't know them yet. They knew enough to pause quotes within minutes. The quotes were already waiting on information. The contact change told them the person tracking that information no longer had authority. Celia opened her salad and closed it again. Lena, what gets these relationships stabilized? It was the first useful question anyone had asked all day. A clear authority list, one revision format named engineering backups, freight claims tied to receiving photos instead of estimates, and a transition call for the accounts with open exceptions. "With you on the call?" Grant asked. "With whoever can answer the questions. That isn't a yes." "Yes, for the current exceptions." Grant looked at Celia as if Lena had confirmed something. Celia said, "Could you do that without undermining Evan?" "I haven't undermined Evan. I'm asking going forward." Lena felt the old reflex rise in her, the one that wanted to make Celia's day easier because Celia had once taken a chance on her. She set it down carefully. "I can explain the files. I won't tell suppliers I still have authority when I don't." "Fine," Grant said. "You'll join calls as technical support. Evan leads. Your supplier emails go through him. Effective tomorrow, you'll also work 8 to 5 on site until the transition is complete." Lena looked at Celia. "I have an approved 7 to 3:30 schedule on Tuesdays and Thursdays." That flexibility assumed a different set of responsibilities, Grant said. "I use those afternoons at my mother's shop. Then you'll need to make other arrangements." Celia's eyes dropped to the salad. Lena wrote the schedule change in her notebook. "How long is the transition?" "We'll evaluate in 30 days. She had learned that a period without an end date usually lasted until the inconvenience belonged to someone important. "Please send that to me in writing," she said. Grant smiled without warmth. "Of course." Patrice found her at 115 near Bay 3, where the Wi-Fi worked if a person stood between a structural column and a rack of boxed faucets. 6 Pike crates had arrived the previous Wednesday. 4 sat open on pallets. 2 had been moved to the quarantine corner, their lower panels crushed inward beneath black stretch wrap. Patrice handed Lena the receiving tablet. Grant approved 4 off the initial estimate. Pike issued the credit before second shift unwrapped these 2. The tablet showed photographs with timestamps, purchase order numbers, and Patrice's notes. One image caught the bent corner of a custom hinge plate through a tear in the cardboard. "Did you send these?" Lena asked. "Friday at 4:52. "To the claims inbox?" "And to you." Lena opened her email on the tablet. The message was there, unread beneath Grant's request for all vendor files by 4. "That part's mine," she said. "Friday had too many Fridays in it." "Can you enter the 2 crates in the doc log?" "Already did." "Attach the packing list and the original estimate." "Already did." Lena handed back the tablet. "You're irritatingly prepared. It's why they keep me away from customers." Patrice's expression changed. "I found your packets on the credenza in Grant's office after the meeting. Door was open. He told me to take them back to purchasing. And you put them on my chair. I considered balancing them on your head, but the optics were complicated." Lena smiled. Patrice tapped the tablet against her palm. "He missed the photos. You missed the email. That doesn't make the claim imaginary." "No." "You going to let him make it yours?" "I'm going to send the record to Evan." "That was not my question. It's the answer I have today." Pike reopened the freight claim at 3:16. At 4, it issued credit for the 2 additional crates and agreed to resume standard quotation review. The expedited place Bellwether had held for 6 years was gone. Grant called the result partial recovery. Patrice printed the credit and taped it above the dock terminal. Tuesday's supplier transition calls began at 8. Evan led with a crisp introduction. Lena supplied drawing numbers, claim dates, release histories, and the names of engineers who could approve deviations. She said very little that was not written in front of her. By Thursday, Grant had learned to ask her questions before the calls and repeat her answers during them. "Coldark will want the line length," she told him before the silver basin discussion. Grant nodded. During the call, he said, "Of course, line length will be a critical variable." 48 feet, Lena murmured. 48 feet, he said. Malcolm Reed paused on the other end. "Lena there?" Grant's eyes moved to her. "I'm here," she said. "You comfortable with the standard CR-88 package at 48 feet in Denver elevation?" "No." Grant's pen stopped. Malcolm continued. "That was my read, too. We'd need the upgraded compressor or a remote condenser adjustment." Grant said, "Send both options." Cold Arc's upgraded option arrived that afternoon, 11% over the number in Grant's blue forecast bar. The following morning, a quote from Frostvane Global appeared in the shared inbox. Frostvane offered an imported refrigeration assembly at nearly the exact price Grant had promised Celia. The document was dense, clean, and denominated in dollars, with freight to Bellwether included. Grant forwarded it to Evan and Lena. Find a path to yes. Lena opened the electrical schedule, then the technical appendix. The silver basin drawings called for 208-volt three-phase service. Frostvane's base assembly was configured for 400 volts at 50 hertz. A conversion package appeared on page 19, excluded from the quoted price. She marked the line in green and stamped the quote. At 4:55, Grant stopped at her desk with his jacket over one arm. "Release it Monday," he said. "It doesn't match the electrical service." Frostvane confirmed North American compatibility. The sales page says that. The quoted configuration is 400 volts. Then include the conversion package. It isn't priced. Get it priced. My workday ends at 5. His eyes went to the clock, then back to her. "Your commitment to boundaries is impressive. You clarified them." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Be careful that you don't clarify yourself right out of a future here." Lena slid the Frostvane quote into a paper folder. Friday's date dried beneath her thumb. "I'll ask for corrected pricing Monday morning." Grant walked away. At 5, Lena shut down her computer. On the corner of her desk, the brass stamp remained set to Friday. She folded its handle and carried it with her. The upholstery shop smelled like hot dust, fabric sizing, and the peppermint tea Rosa forgot on the workbench every Friday. Lena found her mother wrestling a roll of gray vinyl across the old cutting table. One end had caught on a splinter near the measuring rail. "You're late," Rosa said. "It's 7:12. You said 6. I said after work. After work used to have a time attached." Lena set the brass stamp beside a coffee can full of tailor's chalk and helped guide the vinyl loose. The table sagged in the middle, turning every long cut into a shallow curve, unless Rosa braced it from underneath with 2 paint cans and a catalog. They had been saving for a replacement table since Rosa's business partner retired. Lena contributed what she could, usually on the afternoons her flexible schedule left open. The supplier wanted 30% down before fabrication. Rosa ran her fingers over the rescued vinyl. Did the great stainless steel kingdom fall? It discovered email. Ah, fatal. Lena smiled and began squaring the roll. Rosa noticed the stamp. "You stole office equipment?" "It's mine. I bought it." "You bought office equipment?" "It was $19. "You were 25. You should have bought tequila." "It has 12 years on the date wheel. Tequila has longer range." Rosa picked it up and pressed the folded handle open. Friday's date appeared upside down on the rubber bands. "What happened?" Lena kept her attention on the vinyl's edge. "They changed my schedule. You have class Tuesday. I can move it online." "And the shop?" "I'll come evenings." That wasn't the question. Lena pulled the tape measure straight. "I need the job." Rosa set the stamp down. "Then keep the job. Just make sure it keeps paying for all the pieces of you it takes." The next morning, the table's bowed center ruined a 12-foot cut. The replacement vinyl cost $380. Lena transferred the money from her cutting table savings before Rosa could protest. At 8 Monday, Frostvane confirmed that the conversion package would add $4,860 in 8 weeks. Lena forwarded the answer to Evan and Grant with the marked technical appendix attached. Grant appeared at her desk carrying coffee in a Bellwether mug. 8 weeks is unacceptable. That's Frostvane's lead time. The assembly ships in 3. The base assembly ships in 3. The conversion equipment ships separately. What happens if we source the electrical work locally? We'd void their compressor warranty. You asked them? It's on page 21. He put his coffee down too close to her open notebook. Cold Arc is 11% high. Cold Arc fits the job. I'm not paying 11% for a familiar logo. You'd be paying for the right capacity and electrical configuration. I understand what I'd be paying for. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then picked up his coffee. Prepare the frost vane purchase order with the North American compatibility requirement in the notes. Evan will release it. The quoted model still won't match. Put the requirement in the notes. That doesn't change the model. Are you refusing to prepare a purchase order? Lena looked at the green line she had drawn beneath 400 volts/50 hertz. No, I'll prepare the order with the exception attached. Prepare it without commentary. The requirement is sufficient. He walked away before she answered. Lena built the purchase order exactly from Frost Vane's quote. In the notes, she entered, Bellwether requires 208 volts/3-phase/60 hertz configuration. Quoted model states 400 volts/3-phase/50 hertz. Do not release pending supplier confirmation. She attached the quote, Frost Vane's conversion response, and the Silver Basin electrical schedule. Then she routed the draft to Evan. At 10:30, the purchase order status changed from draft to released. Evan came over before she could stand. I saw your hold note, he said. You released it. Grant told me Frost Vane confirmed compatibility. They confirmed a conversion package. He said the base unit could be field converted. The supplier said that voids the warranty. Evan lowered his voice. I asked him about that. And? He said you were overstating the risk because you wanted cold arc. Lena stared at him. I don't think that, Evan said. You signed the order. Yes. Then what you think is mostly decorative. He took the sentence without flinching. I'm documenting the instruction. Do it before the unit arrives. I already did. He turned his screen toward her from across the aisle. An email to Grant, copied to Celia, summarized the configuration concern and Grant's direction to release. Lena read it twice. That doesn't fix the order, she said. No, but it's honest. That felt like the available improvement. Frost Vane acknowledged the purchase order without repeating the electrical requirement. Lena forwarded the acknowledgement to Evan and Grant. Grant replied to her alone. Your role is to facilitate, not reopen approved decisions. She printed it, stamped it, and placed it behind the quote. Grant's new procurement procedure went into effect Wednesday. Paper packets were discouraged. Supplier questions had to be entered in Bellwether's enterprise system, routed to the assigned buyer, then exported in a weekly exception report. The system did not have a field for drawing conflicts. Lena used the remarks box. The remarks box cut off at 250 characters. She wrote each exception in 249. Grant began holding pre-call meetings with Lena at 7:45, collecting details, then leaving her off the supplier calls unless a technical question stopped him. He described Darrow's split-gauge solution as our revised allocation strategy. He introduced Patrice's photographic receiving log as a process, improvement from operations. He used Lena's phrase, confirm demand, in 3 emails. Darrow issued budgetary numbers after Martin released the corrected schedule. The price was 3.8% above Grant's forecast because the accurate gauge mix reduced the volume in the cheapest bracket. Grant contacted 2 competing mills. One could beat Darrow's price with a 16-week lead time. The other would quote only if Bellwether accepted full coils and arranged its own freight. Can Darrow combine our hospital volume with the Marquette hotel release? Evan asked Lena. If sales commits to Marquette this quarter. Will they? They'll say yes. Will they mean yes? Ask Celia in writing. He did. Celia committed the release, Darrow restored part of the volume discount, and the quote resumed under standard lead time. Bellwether's old priority window had already been given to another fabricator. Grant called the final number a successful renegotiation. Evan looked at Lena across the meeting table and wrote 3.8% above forecast in the margin of his legal pad. The Frost Vane assembly arrived on a rainy Thursday 3 weeks later. Patrice called Lena to receiving just after lunch. The crate filled half the quarantine corner, dark wood banded with steel. A customs pouch hung from one side. Behind a clear plastic window, the manufacturer's plate read 400 volts/3-phase/50 hertz. Patrice held up the receiving tablet. P.O. note says 208. Lena photographed the plate. Don't move it to assembly. I enjoy when my authority matches my preference. Grant arrived while Patrice was attaching the red quarantine tag. What's the issue? Patrice pointed to the plate. Grant read it. This was supposed to be North American compatible. It can be, Lena said, with the conversion package. Where is it? Frostvane didn't ship it. Why? It wasn't on the purchase order. His face went blank in a way Lena had come to recognize as danger. You prepared the order with a do not release note. You were responsible for technical support. I attached the technical appendix, the electrical schedule, and Frostvane's response. You buried a critical requirement in attachments. It's in the purchase order notes, as a comment, as a hold. Evan stepped through the receiving doors, legal pad under his arm. He looked at the plate and closed his eyes for half a second. Grant turned on him. Did you verify this? I released it under your written direction. I directed you to obtain a compatible unit. You directed me to release Frostvane's base quote, because you both told me it was field convertible. Lena said, I told you field conversion voided the warranty. Do you have an answer that gets this project moving? Expedite the conversion package or place the cold arc order. Both destroy the margin. Yes. Grant looked toward the fabrication bays, where the silver basin serving line sat half-assembled beneath blue protective film. Patrice, move the unit inside. We'll have electrical evaluate it. It's quarantined, Patrice said. I am overriding quarantine. Put that on the dock log. His eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Patrice held out the tablet. It needs a name. Grant left the unit where it was. Bellwether ordered Cold Arc's upgraded package that afternoon. Expedited production and freight added another 6%. The Silver Basin installation moved 9 days. Fabrication worked a Saturday to recover part of the schedule. On Monday, Lena received a written performance warning for failure to escalate a critical specification mismatch effectively. Celia delivered it in her office with the blinds half closed. You signed the purchase order? Lena asked. No, Evan did. Did you read his email before release? Celia's lips pressed together. I read it afterward. Then what did I fail to do? You failed to make sure the risk was understood. I said it in person. I put it in the order notes. I attached the documents. I emailed the acknowledgement. I know. Then you understood. Celia moved the warning closer to her. Grant believes your communication has become deliberately rigid. My authority became rigid. Every conversation doesn't have to be a contest. Lena looked through the narrow gap in the blinds. Grant stood at Evan's desk with one hand on the partition, talking while Evan stared at his screen. What would you like me to sign? Lena asked. Only that you received it. Lena wrote received, not agreed, added the date, and signed. Celia's voice softened. The bank is reviewing our seasonal credit line next month. We need stability. You need accurate costs. We need both. Then why are you asking me to take responsibility for an order Grant approved and Evan released? Because this family has everything tied up in Bellwether. Lena sat back. And that makes my name cheaper? Celia looked as if Lena had slapped the desk between them. That isn't fair. The warning has my name on it. For once, Celia had no polished answer. The cost of Silver Basin wiped out the procurement team's projected quarterly bonus. Lena canceled her next tuition payment and pushed the course to winter. The cutting table account remained almost empty. At her mother's shop, she said the class schedule had conflicted with work. Rosa looked at her over a pair of reading glasses. You always lie like you're filing taxes. I'm tired. That part, I believe. By the time the bank review approached, Grant's forecast still used Darrow's lowest bracket, Cold Arc's standard package, and Pike's pre-claim freight allowance. Each number had been superseded. Evan found Lena in the records room with the 3 original packets open on a cart. He wants me to certify the purchasing projection, he said. Will you? No. Then tell him. I did. He called me risk-averse. You are. I'm discovering the charm of it. He set his legal pad on the cart. Celia invited Darrow, Coldark, and Pike to Thursday's renewal meeting. The bank advisor wants supplier support for the forecast. The suppliers won't support those numbers. I know. Does Grant? He thinks they'll negotiate in the room. Lena folded the brass stamp upright and pressed Thursday's date onto the first packet. Evan watched the black ink settle. He wants you there, he said, to produce records. That's all? He was very specific. Lena stamped the second packet, then the third. Good, she said. So will I be. The 3 original packets sat on a low cart beside Lena's chair. Darrow on top, Coldark beneath it, Pike at the bottom. She had added the enterprise exception reports, the supplier emails, Patrice's receiving records, Martin's engineering release, and the frost vein documents in separate sections. Grant arrived first and looked at the cart. What is all that? The records Evan asked me to produce. I asked for support documentation, not a historical exhibit. Which documents do you want removed? He glanced toward the hallway. We aren't litigating the past today. We're securing a credit line. Then you'll need current costs. I have current costs. Lena rested her hand on the Darrow packet. These are the current costs. Celia entered with Nora Shaw, Bellwether's commercial banking advisor. Nora carried one thin leather portfolio and wore the expression of a person accustomed to finding the expensive sentence in any document. Introductions went around the table. Evan sat across from Grant, his legal pad centered in front of him. Patrice had been included for the freight discussion and took the seat nearest the door. Simone Beck from Darrow, Malcolm Reed from Coldark, and Allison Pike from Pike Industrial Hardware joined by video. Allison was the 3rd generation of her family to run the hardware company and had once described custom hinges as small metal objects with enormous emotional lives. Grant took the head of the table. Celia sat beside him. Nora opened her portfolio. I appreciate everyone making time. Bellwether is requesting renewal of its seasonal working capital line with an increased ceiling for 4th quarter material commitments. My concern is straightforward. The forecast I received shows improved purchasing costs, while the cash flow schedule shows higher deposits and longer lead times. We're in the middle of a supplier reset, Grant said. Some short-term noise is masking the structural savings. Nora nodded. That's what we're here to clarify. Grant shared his screen. The calm blue bars were back, expanded into 12 months. Darrow stainless at the lowest annual volume bracket. Coldark compressors at standard regional pricing. Pike hardware with Bellwether's former expedited freight allowance. Lena looked at Evan. He wrote 3 small circles in the margin of his pad. Grant spoke for 15 minutes. He was good at it. He explained commodity exposure, freight consolidation, release discipline, and Bellwether's uneven history of custom exceptions. His proposal to group purchases by fabrication window made sense. So did his plan to stop salespeople from promising ship dates before engineering review. If he had presented only what he could actually support, it would have been strong. Nora waited until he finished. Simone, does Darrow have Bellwether at the allocation price shown on page 7? Simone leaned closer to her camera. That was an indicative bracket before the gauge mix and quarterly releases were finalized. But you resumed quotation activity. We did. At the revised bracket in our current quote, Grant said, the difference narrows when we combine the Marquette volume. When Marquette is released, Simone said, sales has committed it. Celia spoke. We have. Simone nodded. Then we can revisit the bracket after the purchase order. Nora made a note. So page 7 is not currently supported. It represents the negotiated target, Grant said. I asked whether it is supported. No, Simone said. Nora turned one page. Malcolm, is Coldark's standard package suitable for the projects in this forecast? For the Wisconsin installations likely, Silver Basin required the upgraded package. Santa Fe will depend on final site conditions. Grant said Silver Basin was an unusual specification. Malcolm's face remained neutral. Altitude is fairly consistent in Denver. Patrice looked down at the table. Nora asked, "And the price shown? That's base regional pricing before operating configuration, freight, or expedited production." "So it is not a landed cost forecast?" "No." Grant moved to the next slide. "We're evaluating alternate refrigeration suppliers to create pricing leverage." "Does that include frost vane?" Nora asked. The question changed the room. Celia had given her the revised Silver Basin cost schedule. Lena could tell from the column Nora touched with her pen. Grant said, "We encountered a configuration issue on one unit." "A unit Bellwether purchased?" "Yes." "Was it returned?" "Return freight and restocking would have exceeded the recovery value. We're attempting to remarket it through a distributor." Nora looked at Malcolm. "And Bellwether purchased the Cold Arc package as replacement?" "Correct," Malcolm said, "at expedited pricing." "Correct." Nora wrote again. Allison Pike adjusted her headset. "Should I address our portion now, or would you like me to wait?" "Please," Nora said. "The hardware pricing is accurate for standard review. The freight allowance is not." That arrangement was tied to Bellwether's expedited queue position. Grant folded his hands, which Pike suspended over a disputed claim that was resolved in our favor. "We paused 6 quotes while the claim record was incomplete," Allison said. "The additional damage was documented and we credited it. By then, the reserved review capacity had been reassigned. You could restore it. We could displace another customer who accepted the available terms while Bellwether's account was paused. We've worked together for 9 years. Yes, that is why we resumed standard review as soon as the record was complete." The temperature in Grant's voice dropped. "It sounds as though we're being penalized for correcting an administrative oversight." Allison looked off screen, then back. "The oversight involved 2 damaged crates, 6 open quotes, and uncertainty about who could authorize resolution." Grant's chair creaked. Nora turned to him. "All 3 suppliers paused quotation activity during the contact transition?" "For several hours," he said. "Most of it was procedural. Darrow's firm annual pricing remained paused for 11 business days," Evan said. Grant looked at him. Evan kept his attention on Nora. Cold Arc resumed project quoting as operating specifications were confirmed. Pike resumed under standard review after the freight record was completed. "Thank you," Nora said. "What caused 3 simultaneous pauses?" "A legacy communication process built around one coordinator," Grant said. "I inherited relationships that had become too dependent on informal knowledge and handwritten tracking." His eyes moved to the cart. Lena felt the moment before it arrived. Grant gestured toward the packets. "That's the system we were dealing with. Pencil marks and date stamps. We've since moved exceptions into our enterprise platform." Nora looked at Lena for the first time since introductions. "You maintain the supplier records?" "Yes." "May I see the Darrow file?" Lena lifted the top packet from the cart and placed it in front of her. Grant said, "The relevant documents are in the appendix." "They're also here," Lena said. Nora opened the cover. The green circle around the conflicting gauges sat between Friday's stamp and Monday's. "What are these dates?" "Friday was my final review before the supplier contacts were reassigned. Monday was when I received the packet back. And the green notation. The release schedule called for 16-gauge material. 2 approved engineering drawings called for 14 on the Hotwell stations." Simone said from the monitor, "That matches our record." Nora turned to the engineering release. Martin's correction carried a Wednesday timestamp and separated the station requirements exactly where Lena's green marks did. Was the conflict communicated before the quote paused? Lena opened the email section. "Friday morning." "By you?" "Yes." "Then why wasn't it resolved Friday?" "Engineering had not issued the corrected release schedule. I was instructed Friday afternoon to stop supplier communication and update my files for Monday." Grant leaned forward. That makes it sound as if the transition caused the technical issue. It didn't, Lena said. It caused uncertainty about who was tracking the resolution. Nora opened the ColdArk packet next. Lena showed her the missing operating sheet, the project locations, the 48-foot line length, and the email identifying the 208-volt service. The green marks on Frostvane's appendix matched the manufacturer's later response. Behind it sat Lena's purchase order hold note, Evan's email documenting Grant's release instruction, and the acknowledgement she had forwarded. Grant interrupted. This level of detail is exactly why decisions became bottlenecked. Evan looked up. The order wasn't bottlenecked. I released it. Based on incomplete support. Based on your direction after the support identified the mismatch. Celia turned toward him. Evan. He slid a printed copy of his email across the table. I've spent a month being told to document instructions. I did. Nora read the email. She passed it to Celia, who did not pass it to Grant. Lena opened the Pike packet herself. Patrice's initial estimate showed 4 damaged crates. The later photographs showed the other 2. Pike's credit memo matched all 6. Grant's yellow note remained behind the cover, preserved in a clear sleeve. Nora read it. Remove before scanning. Looks unprofessional. Grant's face hardened. That note referred to handwriting on a formal packet. The handwriting identified the unresolved exception, Lena said. We're not here to discuss aesthetics. No, Nora said. We're discussing control reliability. She aligned the 3 packets in front of her. The room held the low hum of the video monitor. Malcolm lifted his coffee. Simone looked down, giving Bellwether the small privacy of her eyes. Allison waited. Nora spoke to Celia. The company may have a viable purchasing strategy, but the forecast I received treats targets as committed prices and excludes documented configuration and service costs. I can't recommend the increased ceiling on this version. Grant's hand closed around his marker. If we delay material commitments, we lose the volume position that improves the forecast. I understand. Bring me a revised forecast using supported prices, named approval authority, and realistic release dates. I can review it within 48 hours. Celia asked, what happens to the existing line? It remains in place during review. The increase is pending. Grant glanced at the supplier screens. If we commit the volumes today, can each of you support the pricing in my presentation? Simone answered first. Not without the final release schedule and purchase order. Malcolm said, not without project configurations. Allison said, not with the former freight allowance. Grant's skill did not disappear when the room turned against his numbers. He pivoted. He proposed firm quarterly release windows to Darrow, standardized operating sheets for ColdArk, and a consolidated weekly hardware review with Pike. Each supplier agreed to evaluate the process. Then Nora asked who at Bellwether had authority to approve the commitments. Grant said, I do. Celia said, we'll confirm that in the revised matrix. Grant's head turned slowly toward his wife. Nora closed her portfolio. That would be helpful. After the suppliers signed off, Celia asked Nora to give them 10 minutes. Nora left with the 3 packets still on the table. Grant stood. You let that become a personnel hearing. Celia's voice was quiet. It became one when you blame the forecast on Lena's records. The records are fragmented. They were accurate, Evan said. Grant turned on him. You certified the purchase orders. I certified the ones you directed me to release. I'm declining to certify this forecast. So that's your position? Yes. Grant looked at Lena. And yours? My position was removed from the contact sheet. The marker in his hand snapped at the cap. A dark blue line crossed his thumb. Celia watched him wipe it with a tissue. We have 48 hours, she said. Grant, rebuild the capacity and release schedule using confirmed lead times. Evan, reconcile open purchase orders. Patrice, verify freight assumptions. Lena, build the supplier cost forecast. Grant said, under whose authority? Celia met his eyes. Mine, until I issue the matrix. Lena stayed seated. I can assemble the forecast. I won't certify commercial terms without purchasing authority. Celia's jaw tightened, but this time she did not look away. What authority do you need? Written approval limits, direct access to engineering releases, authority to resolve freight claims within documented thresholds, supplier contact on every account I'm expected to forecast, and a title that matches the work. This is not the time to negotiate your promotion. It's exactly the time to decide who owns the numbers. Evan turned his legal pad around. On the page, beneath his 3 circles, he had written Director of Strategic Sourcing. He slid it toward Celia. Grant gave a disbelieving laugh. She's never managed a department. She's been managing its failures for 6 years, Evan said. Celia looked at the page, then at Lena. Build the accurate forecast. We'll discuss the role after the bank review. Lena gathered the packets. Send me the interim authority in writing before I contact suppliers. Grant walked out. The email arrived 12 minutes later. For the next day and a half, Lena, Evan, Patrice, 2 engineers, and Celia rebuilt every material assumption. Grant produced a workable fabrication schedule that reduced split releases without pretending they were full-volume commitments. His capacity plan saved money. Lena used it. The revised forecast cost more and promised less. It also balanced. Nora approved the increased line at a lower ceiling than Bellwether had requested, with monthly purchasing reports until the new process had a track record. The company could fund its committed work, though Celia turned down a profitable rush project for a conference center because Darrow and Pike could not restore Bellwether's old priority in time. The loss moved through sales like a cold draft. Grant stopped attending supplier calls. Celia narrowed his role to plant capacity, scheduling, and process implementation. Purchase releases above a written threshold required procurement and engineering approval. He objected in private and accepted in writing. 2 weeks later, technicians installed new wireless access points through the warehouse. The receiving tablets worked in Bay 4 for the first time. Patrice tested one beneath the old dead zone and sent Lena a message. Your enemy has useful traits. Very inconvenient. Evan gave notice the following Friday. He had accepted a supply chain position with a medical equipment manufacturer. You don't have to leave because of the meeting, Lena told him. I'm leaving because I signed an order I knew was wrong and felt virtuous for documenting it. That's more self-awareness than most people develop before lunch. I also enjoyed being called the real negotiator. I know. He winced. I'm sorry. I know that too. Before he left, he sent Celia a written recommendation detailing every account Lena had stabilized, every savings estimate she had corrected, and every process she had been performing without authority. Celia offered Lena the senior buyer position. Lena returned the offer with changes. Director of Strategic Sourcing. Salary adjusted to the market range Evan had been hired into, plus responsibility pay for the supplier program. Her Tuesday and Thursday schedule restored. The performance warning removed. Approval limits attached. Reporting directly to Celia. Celia read the marked pages in silence. You used green pencil. It scans clearly. Celia almost smiled. Grant thinks the director title is excessive. Grant thought coordinator was accurate. That ended the discussion. The 3 suppliers adopted Lena's revision protocol. 1 operating sheet, 1 exception owner, engineering copied on deviations, receiving photographs tied to freight claims, and authorities stated on every account. Darrow, Coldark, and Pike resumed quoting through the shared inbox. Their faster service returned gradually, earned release by earned release. Months later, Lena stood in Rosa's upholstery shop beside a new cutting table with a flat steel top and a measuring rail that did not sag. Rosa ran both hands across it. Look at this. Furniture for fabric. It's a tool. It cost more than my first car. Your first car had a hole in the floor. It had ventilation. The down payment had come from Lena's first paycheck under her new title. Rosa had argued until the supplier offered them coffee and pretended to need the back room. Lena placed the purchase order on the spotless table. Beside her name, the printed line read, Director of Strategic Sourcing. She unfolded the handle of the brass stamp. Rosa watched her set the date. Still choosing office equipment over tequila? Apparently. Lena pressed down once, squarely. When she lifted the stamp, the date sat dark and clean beside her title.